mean, if this music doesn't pump you up, I don't know what will. 50 days until college football Saturdays. Feels like it was just yesterday we said there's 100 days out. This year's really flying by. But it's almost time. Nothing better than waking up on a Saturday morning, watching your favorite pregame show, maybe CBS Sports HQ, preparing for a full day of college football action. And we are just 2 weeks away until the release of EA Sports College Football 25. EA Sports coming out with our top 10 team list, getting you prepped and ready for this exciting game. I know a lot of our friends can't wait to get their hands on it. And I don't know, I have a few questions about this top 10 list. Excited to hear our college football expert, Tom Fornelli's take on this list. All right, first 5, pretty good, seems accurate. Number 6, Clemson. Coming in on the power rankings there. So Clemson, the only FBS team, we're not counting military academies, that did not add any transfers entering this season. Why do you think they're deserving number 6, or do you think that's off?
I think this should be about, maybe number 6 might be a little too high. I might have them 7 or 8, but I don't think it's that far off because, as you mentioned, I think Clemson over the last few years has gotten a lot of grief for Dabo Swinney's, approach to the transfer portal, which is essentially it doesn't exist. I want nothing to do with it. I am not going to bother with it. And we have seen a lot of teams use the transfer portal to their benefit over the years to help win national titles. And we've also seen Clemson kind of fall off a bit without using the portal in recent years. But Clemson's coming off its worst year in a long time under Dabo Swinney, but if you look a little closer to last season, yes, there was the opening night loss to Duke, which kind of surprised everybody. But after that, they had an overtime loss to Florida State, they had an overtime loss to Miami, and then they had a 7-point loss to NC State. We're basically 4 or 5 plays away from Clemson being a 10-2 team last year instead of 8-4. So I think going into this season, they are the favorite in the ACC, and they could easily win the ACC again. In fact, my biggest concern with Clemson isn't Dabo's approach to the portal. It's quarterback Cade Klubnik, who I just need to see him take a step forward this season because I think he was one of the biggest hindrances they had last year in those close games. But if he does do that and he develops, this is a Clemson team that'll be back in the college football playoff in 2024.
You mentioned last year's record there. Clemson won 9 games last season. That snapped a streak of 12 straight seasons with 10-plus wins. Our Dennis Dodd has him number 14 in his top 25 that he does for post-spring out there. So he doesn't agree with this. You're more on track with it. All right, here's an interesting one. The defending national champs, Michigan Wolverines, outside the top 10. Now, this is understandable, the amount of changes that happened in that program this offseason, right?
Yeah, it's easy to defend. Like, Michigan is not going to get the same kind of credit that an Alabama gets or a Georgia gets when they've won national titles in recent years and lost players because Michigan hasn't been, a dynasty. It hasn't won multiple national titles. That said, I do think it's a little bit disrespectful because while there is a new head coach in charge and there's a lot of new players on the offensive side of the ball, the key to Michigan's national title last year was its defense. It was the best defense in the country, and while it lost a couple of pieces from that unit, the best players on that defense are all back, and it is still going to be an elite unit in 2024. So while we have questions about what the Wolverines will do on offense, who the quarterback's going to be, what a brand new offensive line is going to look like, the fact of the matter is Michigan might not have to score more than 20 points per game to win every single week because it is going to be very difficult for opponents to put up more than 17 points on them. So I think this is a Wolverines team that is being a little bit slept on heading into the fall. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they win the Big Ten again, even with all the changes.
Ooh, I feel like they're going to use that energy and all those questions about, Harbaugh's gone and JJ's gone. What's going to happen here? I feel like they're going to take that and just run with it, and we'll have to wait and see. This next one, though, listen, I don't get it. Colorado cracking the top 20. Yes, they started off strong last season, the whole Deion effect. They finished 4-8. What's going on? Top 20?
We've got video games to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we've got to sell the game. We've got to put Colorado in the top 20. Honestly, I think what this is in my history as a video game player and playing this game growing up, the ratings get skewed by the best players. Like at your quarterback, you've got Shadur Sanders, who's probably going to be one of the higher-rated quarterbacks in the game. You have Travis Hunter, who's probably going to be a 99 as one of the best players in college football. And I think that skews the overall rating. The problem with real life for Colorado is after those two guys, there's not a whole lot left in the cupboard. And the one problem that the Buffaloes dealt with last year was they got off to a good start, but then football happens. And when you play football, people get hurt. And when you get hurt, you need depth. Colorado has no depth. All the players that they brought in through the transfer portal last year that didn't work out went back in the portal and left. And in came some new transfer players from other schools who might be slight upgrades on the guys that they had last year. They might not be. But the problem is there's still nobody behind them, and you have to play 12 games. So I think Colorado will be better this year. I do not think Colorado will be the 20th best team in the country.
Completely agree with you there. Completely agree with you. Okay, up next, we're going to go back to the Big Ten. Wisconsin Badgers coming in at number 18. They finished their first season under new head coach Luke Fickell, 7-6. You like them at 18? What do you think?
I think they're a little bit overrated. I do not have them in my top 25 as of right now. When you look at this team, there's a lot of questions on offense. Tyler Van Dyke, the former Miami quarterback, has transferred in to play QB, and I think he's an upgrade over what they had in Tanner Mordecai. The problem is I look at the defensive side of the ball, and I give Luke Fickell the benefit of the doubt when it comes to defense because he was a great defensive coordinator. He had great defenses at Cincinnati while he was the head coach, and he's going to have great defenses at Wisconsin in the long run. I just don't know if he's going to have a great defense in 2024 because while they have an excellent cornerback in Ricardo Hallman, the rest of that secondary is very suspect. And while, maybe you can get away with not having to defend the pass too much in the Big Ten, I still think it will be a problem, particularly now that the Big Ten is getting rid of divisions with the additions of the 4 Pac-12 schools. So the Badgers aren't going to get that kind of easy runway that they've had in previous years now that they have to deal with the Oregons and USCs, Washingtons, and Ohio States every single year. So I think Wisconsin's going to be a good team. I think it's probably going to get to a bowl game. I just don't know if its record is going to be much better than 7-5, 8-4 because of the tough games that are on that schedule.
Really tough games. I'm excited for that Week 3 matchup with Alabama on September 14th. I definitely have that one circled on my calendar. All right, let's talk snubs. So a couple of these teams, they weren't on your top list. Give me 1 or 2 teams that you feel like deserves to be on that list.
I would say the biggest snub that the EA does not have in its top 25 is easily Missouri. I think that they were one of the best teams in the SEC last year. They kind of flew under the radar a bit because Alabama reached the playoff and Georgia was Georgia. But the Tigers were very good last year, especially on offense. And their 2 best players in quarterback Brady Cook and wide receiver Luther Burden are both back. So they're going to be very good on offense again. And then I would say another snub. I'm torn between Tennessee and Kansas State. Honestly, I think they should both be in the top 25. I get why they left Tennessee off because they have a young, unproven quarterback. So like I mentioned earlier in the segment, that's going to impact their overall ratings. But I still think they're going to win a whole bunch of games and put up a whole lot of points. And Kansas State is a team that has been so consistent over the years since Chris Klieman took over for Bill Snyder. Yes, Will Howard left and transferred to Ohio State. But if you ask the people around Kansas State, they're not that disappointed about him leaving because they have a kid behind him in Avery Johnson who they are very high on, and they wanted to get on the field more often. So I think the Wildcats could be a big surprise in the Big 12 this year in a wide open conference. This is a team that I think can win that league, and if you're capable of winning your conference, you should be in the top 25.
Missouri was such a fun team to watch last year. Brady Cook doing his thing out there. Got to give a shout out to Cody Schrader too, who's going on to the next level. But man, I hope that they have a successful year. They're a great team out there. Tom Fornelli, we appreciate you here on HQ as we're breaking down this EA list that is a little questionable. Thanks for your input, though. So you got to check out the Cover 3 pod, their latest podcast. Bud Elliott, he actually got to experience an exclusive preview of the game. He shares his thoughts on playing, all the traditions, and more. So scan that QR code, listen to the latest episode of the Cover 3.